Welcome to part two of database programming in Python. So what we did in the first video is we actually went out, we created a database called My Database, and then we created a table. Let me go back to my database structure. We have one table in there called albums, and then within that table we have 5 fields for title, artist, release dates, publisher, and media type. And each one of those fields is of type text. So then after that, we inserted 5 records into our database, Back in Black, Nevermind, and Justice for All, the Black Album, and In Your Honor by AC/DC, Nirvana, Metallica, and the Foo Fighters. So what we're going to be doing first is we're going to go ahead and look at how you can use update and delete statements to update your database. So being able to update your database records is key to keeping your data accurate. If you can't update, then your data will become out of date and pretty useless very quickly. Sometimes you'll need to delete rows from your data too. So what we're going to do is we're going to first look at the update statement. So what I've done is I've created another little program called update delete, where we're going to show you the syntax for both updating and deleting a record in a table using Python. So again, the first two statements are fairly familiar. We need to go ahead and connect to our My Database, and then we need to go ahead and get a cursor object so we can execute our SQL on the database. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to update the In Your Honor albums publisher. So if we go ahead and look at the publisher, it's currently listed as DGC Records. And what we need to do is we need to update it to RCA Records. So what I've done here is instead of specifying the SQL in my actual execute statement, I'm just saving it in a string variable called SQL and then passing that SQL statement to my execute command. So again, to update, you specify the keyword update and then the table that you want the update to occur in. And then the next keyword you specify set. And then you would specify the field that you want to change or the column you want to change. So we want to change the publisher column. And what we want to do is we want to set that column to RCA Records. And then we're specifying the title. So what we want to do is we want the SQL to search until it finds the title of In Your Honor. And then when it finds that title, it'll change the publisher to RCA Records. If you did not specify this where clause, then what would happen is all your rows publisher would get set to RCA Records. So basically this limits the records that you're going to go ahead and update. So what we're going to do, we'll print out update was successful, and then we need to commit our change. Again, when you make any structural change to your database or to your tables within your database, you need to commit those changes. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go in and we're going to delete all Nirvana albums. So what we're going to do is, again, we'll call our SQL. We're going to call the keywords delete from. We're going to specify our name of our table, which is albums, and then our where clause is where our artist is equal to Nirvana. So what this will do is it'll search through our database, any row that contains the artist Nirvana, it'll go ahead and delete that from our table. And then we'll go ahead, execute our SQL statement. We'll print out delete was successful. We'll commit our change, and then we will go ahead and close our our connection to our My Database DB. So I'm going to go ahead, click on the run command, run module. Okay. So what it comes back, update was successful, delete was successful. So I'm just going to go into my DB browser for SQLite. And what I need to do is I'll go back into my database structure, refresh my data in my browse data, and now you can see Foo Fighters publishers now RCA Records, and there no longer is a record for Nirvana's Nevermind album. So that takes you through how you can go ahead and delete and update. So what we've done now, we've gone ahead, we've created our table in our SQLite database. And what we need to do now is once you've created that table, the main thing you're going to do with your database is retrieve information from your database. So what we're going to walk through is how you can go ahead and create queries in Python and then view the information within Python by using Python commands. So let's go ahead and open up. Again, I've created a separate program to go ahead and look at this. So I will go in, click on recent files, and click on queries. So what we've done here, again, the first three statements should seem pretty repetitive. We've imported our SQLite 3 module. We've connected to our My Database DB, and we've gone ahead and gotten our cursor object so that we can connect to our database and make changes to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to print out tracks. So what we want to do is we want to select all albums from the albums table and order the output by artist. So what we're going to do is we're going to execute the statement. First, we're going to specify our select command, and then by specifying the asterisk, splat, or star, basically we want to retrieve all columns from our table when we look at this information. So we specify from, and then we specify the table, which is albums, and then we specify order by, and that's going to be the column information that we're going to order the information when it gets displayed. So that is our SQL statement. So after we go ahead and execute that, basically what our cursor object returns is a list, the various rows that meet that select criteria. So what we're going to do is we're just going to iterate through that cursor, and we're going to print out each one of the rows of data. So that's our first query, and then we're going to print a blank space. The next query, what we're going to do is we're going to print out the Metallica album titles and release dates. So we're going to select a title and release dates for all Metallica albums. So our SQL statement will be select title and then comma release date. So again, you do not have to return all the columns from your database. You can just specify what columns you want to return from your database in a query by listing those columns separated by commas. And then we have the keyword from, and then we have our table, which is albums. And then what we're going to specify our where clause, where our artist equals the question mark. So what we can do when we go ahead and actually execute this SQL, we can go ahead and pass in the string, and then we can specify Metallica, and basically what that'll do is that'll substitute the question mark with Metallica in our query. So again, it's the string, the actual query, and then our substitution. And then what we're going to do is for each row in our in the information that gets returned, we're going to go ahead and print out the title. And then row 0, what that will amount to is our title column that gets returned. And row 1 relates to our release date. So that's where we can grab out our uh, individual information for each one, individual columns for each one of the rows that get returned. So we will go ahead and do our run here, run our module, click on OK to save, and then what we see here are our tracks. So it lists all our tracks in alphabetical order by artist, and then it returns the title is of the two Metallica albums and Justice for All, and the release date of 8/25/1988, and then 8/12 of 1991. So this is kind of just a brief introduction to using database programming using Python. Again, you can use Python to connect to all the various databases that are available out there: Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, on and on. And the queries we're doing are pretty minimal. We only had one table in our database. When you're accessing data from databases, you could have hundreds of interrelated tables in your database that you need to retrieve information from. So this kind of just provided you with a brief introduction to database programming using Python. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is what I've done is I've actually gone in and combined everything into one program. So I'll just go ahead and open it. So if you go ahead and look at the combined program, we have our import, we get our connection, we get our cursor, we drop our table, we create the albums table. Then after that, we print that it's been created successfully. We commit our creation of our table to our database. We go ahead, we insert the information into our database table. We save the data to the database by committing the rows that were inserted. Then we update the Honor Albums publisher. Again, after that's been updated, we commit that change. We delete all Nirvana albums. Again, after the SQL was run, we commit that change. And then we go ahead, we run our queries. With the first query, we select all albums from the albums table, order the output by artist, and the second query, we select the title and release dates for all Metallica albums. After you run those statements, you do not have to run a commit because we're not updating the structure of the database. We're just retrieving information from the database. So before I go ahead and run this, what I am going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and delete my database that's currently out there. And what we'll do is we will rerun the program from start to finish and see if we get the same results. So I'll go ahead, run the module. What it does is it prints out all my statements. I see my tracks and I see my albums. The other thing that you can do, if when you want to go ahead and actually open up a database, you can go ahead and open it up from a shortcut. Double click on it, and then you can go ahead and actually open up the database read-only. So when you open it up in read-only mode, basically you can't make any changes to the database within the DB browser for SQLite. So I'll just go ahead, open my database, go ahead and find it. open it up, we have my tables, and if we look at the browse data, it's the same thing again. So again, this is just a brief introduction to database programming with Python. So that's all I had for this video, so we will talk to you later.